So another fault that I will commonly see has to do with timing, and typically what that manifests or what that looks like is when the knees begin to extend too early and the hips don't extend in conjunction with the knees. So Andrew's going to be playing this, and there's a term for this, but I'll keep it rated G here. But when the hips elevate too high, the reason why that happens is the knees get pushed back too soon. And again, there should be a synergistic relationship here where the knees and hips are extending at the same time. So they're starting in these opposite places here, but as the knees push back, the hips are elevating, and we end, of course, in this nice tall position. But what happens is the knees extend early, the hips elevate, but they're still flexed. And so what will happen, especially when resistance comes into play, Andrew's actually doing a good job here of keeping the bar close to the body. But what I see when the knees extend too soon is the weight stays over the toes. And so what this is going to do is kind of leave this heavy resistance further away from the center of mass. And what that will do is then tend to cause some type of thoracic flexion or lumbar flexion or protraction of the shoulders because the weight's too far away from the center of mass. And so that would be the common fault here, which again is the knees extending too early in relation to the hips extending. And I think oftentimes people will do this because the knees are in the way. And if they were to just stand up, they know that the bar is going to hit their knee. And so that's why it's important for me to get the shins right there. That setup already has them out of the way. And then all we need to do is just stand straight up rather than get the knees out of the way to then allow the bar to raise up and then the hips to extend.
Right. Yep. One of the things that you see here, and I think one of the ways that I always kind of coach and cue this as getting more of a focus on either the upper back or the head, because if you notice this, the head especially moves forward, and it's not going up at the same. We want to see the hip and the head moving up together. Basically, if you can get the head driving up and back, or the upper back driving kind of up and back, and you know, an easy way to do this is just smack somebody on the upper back and drive that back, or put a hand there and have them push against that. Again, kind of a tactile cue. That way, that's the first thing that should be moving up and back, if not the hips. So we see the hips elevating here, again, for the reasons that you mentioned. But if I'm going to try and fix this, I'm going to put some pressure on the upper back or the back of the head and have the athlete or client push against that in order to, or you can say, I mean, you could use a verbal cue, drive the head up, or you know, whatever the verbiage you might want to use. Head up might be a good one. But we want to avoid that rolling forward. Oftentimes we get the weight over the toes there. You know, as you mentioned, the bar starts to shift away from the shins. You can see there's definitely more of a gap there between, you know, we want the bar up against, it should be scraping up the shin on the way up. So the more we get the weight out in front over the toes, it puts more emphasis. There's more shear force on the back then. The further we get the weight kind of, let me get my hands in the picture here, the weight away, there's a longer lever arm there. We don't want the long lever arm. We want those as close as possible to maximize our efficiency and leverage. So I think that's it.
Yeah, for me, I would just say, as far as cueing, to avoid the assault of slapping someone, this really is, for me, a setup. This can get fixed before the pull even happens, which is pushing the knees back just a little bit, loading the hamstrings, getting some tension there, and then just, you know, having them stand straight up rather than kind of booty up and then standing.
Right. Yep. Anything else to add? I think that one's pretty straightforward.
That's good.
All right. Our last one that we'll be addressing is kind of a fault that happens on the eccentric portion of the lift. So this is really a concentric error. We'll look at eccentric error next.